All right, well, welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn with Raina. And hope you're all excited to listen to her speak. And we're very excited here at Resource YYC to be hosting her. And if you're not aware, Resource YYC is a co-working space for professionals where we have private office spaces, dedicated desks, boardroom rentals, and drop-in options. So if you're ever in need, come check us out. All right, over to you, Raina.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for hosting the meeting and inviting me, and Ron, of course. Thank you. So nice to see you again. And this is a topic, I don't know if it resonates particularly with consultants, but this is definitely, I think, a topic that everybody could take away today for those even seeking new positions. There's going to be a lot of great tips that we can use in this presentation that could help tailor your strategy for looking for a new position, embarking into a new career, into entrepreneurship. And if you're a consultant, even some advice and a catalyst to possibly retaining new clients. So we hear a lot about building a brand identity. And, you know, branding has been around for years and years in all organizations on particularly when it comes to marketing and how to, I think, gain a competitive advantage. But now with, you know, post COVID, particularly pre COVID, during COVID, we talk a lot about brand identity and how uniquely you need to position yourself and create a personal brand that resonates not only with employers looking for your candidacy, but also resonates with clients that are looking for something different and how you're going to stand out amongst the crowd. So hopefully today I can take you through what we feel here at Agilist Executive Consulting. We've created pillars to building a brand identity, both for yourself and for your business. And hopefully it resonates. And there's an activity we can go through as well if time allows it and if you're willing to. So we can get started. Five parts to the presentation today. Part one, we'll go through the strategy to building a personal brand, what we've developed as the pillars of creating a brand identity. Part two, we'll evaluate the impact on culture. Very, very important. We talk a lot about organizational culture because culture is about people. Culture is about representation, and representation, particularly about individuals coming in to represent themselves and become a part of the culture. As a result, their brand identity becomes a part of the culture. We'll go through a quick group activity and it's called Beyond the Bio. We are actually going to develop the pillars of our own brand identity. We're going to then discover the how. The how, of course, for us, we feel the how is discovering your personal brand, defining your purpose. How do we do that? How can we help you look at some objectives and mandates for how we feel discovering, defining your purpose is impactful for your personal brand? And then we'll have an opportunity to go through some questions and answers. People, business, strategy. So the pillars of a personal brand that we feel are very, very impactful. I'm going to come from it from as if we were candidates applying for new roles or and looking for clients. We're going to embark and put together a strategy to retain potential clients. So people, business, strategy, people, the who, what, where, when, and why. If you were to build out your personal brand and identify yourself under these pillars, you've already created a strategy that holds you not only accountable to who you're representing as yourself to the organization as a candidate or to a client, but it's actually quite helpful in identifying how you're going to impact the organization. So people, when we think about who, organizations are going to seek team members that have invested both time and awareness into developing their personal impact on the firm's culture and team and their strategy for delivering results to clients. So for the who part of this, the biggest takeaway there is personal impact, culture, team, clients. So when we're thinking about ourselves, for instance, as as a candidate for a position, where we need to recognize that organizations are looking for someone who's going to invest their time into developing their impact for the bottom line of the organization. So, what is going to be their impact on culture? How are they going to affect the team? How are they going to integrate their team? And then, what is this individual strategy for delivering results to clients? That who part is really getting to know the individual behind their name. We're going beyond the name and we're trying to develop and represent ourselves outside of just our name. How are we going to impact the culture? How are we going to impact the team? And what strategy are we bringing to help our organization that we want to become a part of deliver these results to clients? The business, the what and the where. Organizations will evaluate a team member's understanding of a company's global impact, competitive advantage, external environment, and how their ability to deliver rewarding outcomes is aligned with the company's vision, mission, and values. Key takeaways here on the what and the where under the business pillar is global impact, and we'll get to that in a moment, competitive advantage, ability to deliver outcomes, and of course, vision, mission, and values. So when we're seeking a position with an organization, this business pillar and drawing out and developing your what and your where is a thorough understanding of the business that you're applying to, or of the client's business that you're hoping to receive support with or to support the client. So when we look at the global impact with COVID, what we've learned is the world is actually a lot smaller and not as large as we once thought it was. So business across borders is very, very possible and easier today now that we have the technology tools more useful to us. Not that they're new, but they're just more impactful and useful. We've learned how to work in a remote environment. Therefore, business across borders has therefore become also a little bit easier as well. So businesses are looking for candidates who understand that they have a global impact, their brand has a global, their organizational brand has a global impact, and they want to know how the individual that they're bringing on board, either as a consultant or as a team member, how is their brand represented globally? Who are they, and do they understand the business? Do they bring a competitive advantage? And how are they going to actually deliver rewarding outcomes? Do they understand? Does this candidate understand what our mission, what is their vision, what our values are? Those values need to align, I think, as a personal, what we bring to the table as a brand identity, understanding who we are and showcasing that in an interview format or when seeking clients for business, knowing what their vision, mission, and values is really does secure that pillar of business on the what and the where. Strategy, the third pillar, strategy, when and why. Organizations will seek commitment from team members toward their professional development goals while challenging them to highlight the organization's strategic plan and their direct role in long-term success. This is key. We don't think a lot about strategic initiatives as brand identity or as a personal brand when interviewing for a position or trying to obtain an advantage when trying to work with a client. But when we think about strategy, we have to think about the when for the organization and the why. And the key words here is strategic plan and direct role in long-term success. What is the short-term and long-term goals of their strategic initiatives for this organization that you're either applying to or trying to become a part of as a consultant? And what is your role in long-term success? So that strategy, when we're going out to develop and build and promote our brand identity, we need to understand the when and the why of the organization. We need to highlight to the organization that we are fully recognizing what their long-term, short-term strategy goals are. And then we're going to actually integrate what our direct role in success is that. We're going to help measure our own success in that. So the next slide, what we've put together is bringing these pillars together under two banners. So to develop this entire strategy, and we can move to the next slide, Rosemary. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coordinating and maneuvering the slides for me. Um, so to build out this strategy, we have the three pillars: business, people, strategy. Under the business, we found that, during COVID, um, preventing organizations from having to stall, now that we've learned through the process of the pandemic, the business pillars of project evolution and execution, workforce planning, brand perspective and identity, competitive advantage, and environmental position. These are five pillars that we've identified will continue to evolve, become agile. This is what is going to, we're tired of hearing the word pivot, but the reality is under a business plan, as as a consultant coming into an organization to help them and become a partner with them, or as a candidate to become a team member with that organization, if we understand the business's project evolution, how we're going to become a part of the workforce planning, understanding these strategy pillars, and then on the flip side, understanding the personal characteristics of your own brand, of your own personal brand identity, and characteristics of leaders, characteristics of a team. Um, Irregardless of an organization's culture, we feel that these characteristics of agility, endurance, resilience, apprehension, and compassion, these are core to what's going to continue to be seen when hiring individuals into a team. These aren't necessarily all leadership characteristics. These are characteristics that actually develop leadership, develop entrepreneurship, develop that entrepreneurial spirit that every organization is looking for when hiring people into their organization. So if we go to the next slide, we've decided to tie these into one another. So we felt that project evolution and execution will require endurance. And what we mean by this is we saw at the peak of the pandemic, during pandemic, and now at post-pandemic, while we learn a new way of work, post-pandemic, hybrid, remote, and strategy for growth strategy for an organization. Project evolution and execution and how we evolve our projects and execute them is changing. And that requires endurance. And the reason we use endurance as a characteristic is because we need to remain agile. We need to have a team that understands that at the flip of a dime, things could change. And we need to be able to have that resiliency to be able to make it through. So that endurance is key when evolving projects, when growing projects and executing projects. It doesn't end. That endurance is ongoing. So these are characteristics, again, when you're hiring people or you're looking for support for your organization, this characteristic of endurance is going to be fundamental to evolve your projects and execute. Workforce planning, we paired this with agility. Workforce planning, today workforces, as we know, they're not hierarchical. We're looking more to a flatter organization. If there is a hierarchy in place, pardon me, if there is a hierarchy in place, the workforce planning strategy here is to actually evolve each role, not necessarily per department and not necessarily per title, but is to evolve it where there becomes a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit where individuals can bring a different mindset, different thinking, different skill set, and utilize all of their experiences into one role. A role is necessary to be defined, of course, for compensation, benchmarking, to help us identify where in the market this role will fall for equity, for fair compensation. However, with workforce planning, that role may evolve. So we need to ensure that the characteristic of agility is present in everyone that we hire into our organization. Brand perspective and identity, which is what this lunch and learn is about today, and compassion. And the reason we look at compassion as a key trait is this is not, again, necessarily as important for leaders to exhibit, but it's as important to hire people with this trait into your organization, recognizing that their brand perspective and how they identify will change. It definitely will change based on how the organization changes. So when we're hiring individuals into our role, recognizing who they are through their brand identities and bringing that level of compassion to be fully aware that that might change and that the organization is open to evolving and accepting. This is where those diversity, equity, inclusion strategies and initiatives come in, is that we need to look at compassionate leadership, compassionate team, compassionate just characteristics in welcoming, identifying, and creating a team environment for the culture to evolve. Competitive advantage. So, what we've paired competitive advantage again is with resilience. To remain a competitive advantage in the marketplace globally, and not necessarily just for your industry, but when actually hiring talent, how do you stand out as an organization, or how do you stand out as a client to be able to retain and engage and attract and hire top talent? There's a level of resiliency here because there is probably the statistics, 75% of opportunities will become a no. And we need to be okay with knowing that despite our competitive advantage through our brand, there is a 75% chance that whoever we are seeking to join our team or whoever we are seeking to become a part of a team, there is a 75% chance that it will be no. There is a lot of competition. There has to be consistent resiliency on our end as a characteristics to persevere and focus on how far we've come, focus on that level of resiliency that's required as candidates either entering an organization, we're in the market looking for a new role, or as consultants looking for more client work. And on the flip side, as businesses, we know our competitive advantage, but how are we going to continue to retain our top talent? We want to keep our team. So that level of resiliency will always need to be most aware of. Environmental position, and we pair this up with apprehension. Apprehension is okay. You know, we talk a lot about through executive coaching and leadership development, we talk a lot about the importance of it's okay not being okay. And I know that it's overutilized over the last few years, particularly, but we need to reiterate that there is apprehensive behavior, there is an apprehensive emotion that is very, very present in individuals in the organization, particularly leaders, when they're actually scoping their environmental position in the market. And that's normal. And I think that as leaders and as organizations that are looking to retain talent, it's important to talk about that, that we recognize out in the market what our environmental position is. This is where we feel that we fit in. This is where we feel that we are going. And this is what we want to achieve, but we're apprehensive because we cannot always predict the unpredictable and unprecedented circumstances. Clearly, because of COVID, that's what we've learned. So if we go over to the next slide, we want to talk about, before we go into developing our own personal brands and going through a bit of a group activity, if you're comfortable, is our impact on culture. Purpose, progress, profitability. How do we put this all together? The who, the what, the where, the when, and the why. If you focus on purpose, team members should be prepared to define short and long-term goals related to their career aspirations and how these align to their role in the organization. This is where your purpose is going to come in. And when you're applying for a role, talking about your purpose and how your own short and long-term goals and career aspirations, again, are aligning to the role or the organization is going to be key. Progress. Team members should be prepared to elaborate on their experience and the skills acquired through their career and how that complements the role in the organization. So again, we're looking for, not only situational interview questions, but we look at the behavioral interview questions and, tell me about a time when you did ABC. Organizations want to know about the progress. Again, either as a consultant that's coming into the team or as a new team member, we are very interested in knowing your progression and knowing that you know your progression. And a lot of the times, organizations are going to ask, not only tell me about a time when you succeeded in, Be prepared because a key question will be, tell me about a time when you didn't succeed. Let's talk about failure. How did you overcome failure? How did you grow from failure? What were some of the key takeaways from failure? And this is a key one, is the business acumen piece is so important. Again, regardless of role, profitability, team members should be prepared to showcase their ability in research and application of current trends and how their experience will add value to the role and organization. At the end of the day, organizations are using metrics and KPIs and OKRs to demonstrate that their team and their talent and that experience and that wealth of knowledge and wealth of skill set is adding value both to the role they were hired for and both to the organization. So understanding your value and the profitability expected possibly that the organization is going to look at from you is going to be very, very impactful. These three P's impact culture. This will impact your brand, how you're identifying into the culture of the organization by understanding the purpose, progress, and profitability of what you're bringing to the table. So if we go to the next slide, here's an opportunity for us to go beyond the bio. Building out the pillars of our own personal brand, again, our who, what, where, when, and why, and then determining how the personal brand supports the people, business, strategy pillars of your company's brand identity. This is something we could do today. This is something certainly you could take back and work with your team. The reason we call it Beyond the Bio is because that's exactly what it is. A biography is meant to exhibit and be written in the content that will market, attract, and bring work to you or bring you as the top candidate talent in an organization. So your biography is meant to exhibit your skill set and experience and all the great things that you've done. But this activity, what we're doing is we're highlighting what organizations today are going beyond the CV. They're going beyond the resume. They're going beyond the beautiful website and the consulting website. They actually want to know and dig a little bit deeper and go beyond all of that. So when we build out these pillars, such as people, we want to go beyond your name. Business, we want to go beyond the title and we want to go beyond your location. Strategy, we want to go beyond your progression. And the why, we want to go beyond your experience. If we're hiring and we have opportunities to tailor questions to highlight these three pillars, it's actually a very, very good way of identifying and bringing in a personal brand and how that's going to represent your organization. It's also a great way, a great activity for ourselves to recognize how we are out in the marketplace as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as leaders. Do we understand ourselves beyond the bio? So for the next 5 or 10 minutes, I'd love to open it up and see if anyone's brave enough for me to ask them to build out these pillars. And don't be shy. Greg, I see you've put off your mic, so I'm going to pick on you, Greg.
Sure, why not?
Perfect. So Greg, if we were to look at you, and it's a pleasure to meet you. This is the first time I'm meeting you. I'd like to go beyond your name. If you were to think about yourself and identifying yourself into, let's say, an organization, and what would you say we could do beyond your name?
Well, I'm the owner of the organization I work for,
Mm-hmm.
and I also am the sole full-time employee. So I'm dealing with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of my thoughts.
Yeah. So if you had clients, when you work with your clients, what's important to you in terms of how you're being represented by yourself as the sole owner of your organization, outside of your organizational name and your name?
Yeah, it's quite personal. I try to build a relationship with my clients it's not beyond the business relationship necessarily, but more of a personal relationship. I might know their family status, might know if they have kids, or might know a little bit about where they live. It's just some of the challenges that they face kind of around what they're doing. that helps me do work with them better. That's kind of
Mhm.
my thing.
So, on the business side, we know that you're the sole owner and the only individual working for your organization. If we were to think about the business pillar and look at the what, how would you define beyond your title and the where? I'm assuming you're in Calgary, but what
Yeah.
about your location?
So did you ask about location? Is that what you asked about?
Yeah, or we could go to title first. Let's
Oh, okay.
define your what beyond your title.
So a lot of people ask me what I do, and I've, like probably most people, it's always a bit of a struggle to sort of compact that into
Mhm.
a defined moment. But I help businesses, small, medium, and large, depending on where they're located in North America, with their business communication, whether that's an online meeting, phone, text, chat, that type of thing. So I sell and support that. So when I think about my brand,
Mhm.
obviously my brand's tied up in me quite a bit and that personal touch.
Well,
I try to be a little bit more laid back in my brand,
mhm.
but can step up if I meet somebody that's a little bit more intense.
Fantastic. And these are
Yeah.
things that you can talk to about yourself with potential clients, or if you're planning to grow your team and hiring individuals who want to know you just a little bit more than the owner. What
Yeah.
about where, Greg? Beyond your location, and this is a bit tricky, but there is a strategy here on the where.
The where, well, I am located in Calgary, but I
Mhm.
work remotely with people all over North America. Is that sort of what you're driving at?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because when we look up, your organization, we'll see, okay, it's a local organization. But if we push a little bit more to get to know Greg and beyond Greg's business, is
Mhm.
it just Calgary? And I wouldn't have known had I not had the opportunity to talk to you and say, so do you work with other organizations globally? Tell me about the other projects you're working on, and are they all in Calgary?
Right.
I don't necessarily always talk about that.
Yeah, and that I think people forget that sometimes, especially professionals like myself, who we know that we have tools to work remotely with anybody anywhere, but sometimes we forget to say that, right?
Right, because the skill set for teams that you can hire across borders is very different than the skill set for teams just in local Calgary. And so
Yeah, absolutely.
you're open to that, knowing that is again attractive. It's going to gain some momentum. Okay, I'm getting to know Greg a little bit better. Strategy. So when we build up the strategy pillar of your brand identity, what about the when beyond your progression?
The when. Well, a lot of did I let it go? The slides, I think the slides disappeared. Oh, there they are. Sorry, I was trying to figure out where the slides were and I couldn't see the slides. There we go. Much better. So we're talking about the when.
Mm-hmm. Beyond your progression, because I think your business will somewhere on your website. I'm sure I can know when you were incorporated, when you launched, but let's go beyond that progression of your organization.
So we might know that I've been in business for 16 years as a sole corporation. Um, and we don't have any plans on closing anytime soon. So we're going to be around. So I think the big message I would say to people there is that I've been in business for a while, been doing this for a while, and I have no plans on closing my doors anytime soon, like retiring or something like that. Because a lot of people want to know, are you going to be around?
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
how steady are you, or a fly by night kind of guy? You know,
Yeah. And what were you doing before that, which takes us into why beyond your experience. You'll have a fantastic bio that Greg has 25 plus years in this industry, but they're going to want to know, but we want to go a little bit more beyond your experience. Tell us a little bit about your challenges and how did you end up deciding that you wanted to launch this business? So that's where the why pillar is so important. We're going to talk a little bit more about beyond what most leaders don't talk about. Most
uh,
leaders don't talk about.
yeah. I mean, for me personally, I worked for TELUS for a number of years in the telecommunication
Okay.
industry, and I tried moving up the corporate ladder, right?
Mhm.
Tried getting some education that would point me in the right direction to become a corporate trainer, and I was working in the tech side of TELUS and the internet side. And so I really wanted to train people on how to use the different systems we use to do our jobs. And I just couldn't get there. So I got frustrated and I decided, well, maybe it's time that I started my own company and went and did that kind of training with other people. And so that's basically what happened.
And that's fantastic, Greg. I feel like in this building out your 3 pillars, I could go on your website and read it and think, fantastic, I'm going to contact Greg. But now that I've gone through this activity with you, I feel like I know you just a little bit more intimately. And it gives me that level of almost comfort. It breaks down a bit of barriers. It makes it a little bit more comfortable for me to want to approach you, to do business with in the future. Or if you ever have a role that you're hiring for, it would make me as a candidate remember you and say, you know what? I remember Greg, he worked at TELUS. You know what? I'm going to give him a call and see if we can work together. I just got to know your brand and your personal brand just a little bit more than, outside of just a Zoom meeting. So thank you.
Yeah,
I don't know how you feel
absolutely.
about that,
You're
but
welcome.
yeah. Anyone else brave before we continue on who'd like to try this activity? It's a small group, so I feel like we're all friends, really, kind of, right, Ron? Or you're just Ron's friends, and I'm just lucky to be here today.
No. I would actually be a volunteer for you, Irina, but I have to jump off the call in 2
Sure.
minutes. So I could volunteer someone else, but
Yes,
I won't do that.
maybe I will. And if you're brave, and again, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I'm going to give it a quick chance with Karen McPherson. Are you comfortable with me calling you out, Karen?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Sure, no problem. Your camera's cutting out too. How about Louise? Louise, did you want to take this as a go? Hey.
Hello.
It's not a Louise.
I didn't get dressed up for this one.
Sorry.
So.
A Louis.
Do you
It's
see
a Louis.
Do you see why beyond the name is so important?
Well,
Yes,
it's important enough that I wanted to attend it.
That's right. If you're comfortable, Louis, we can go through this with you before we go on to the next slides.
No, I'm good. I'm just absorbing it. I mean, I guess I had to step off the call for a couple minutes a little while ago, so I'll apologize if it was covered. Is that at least the first part what I was looking at was sort of, it seemed to be more orientated towards already being at an organization and how you sort of develop your profile. As somebody that's looking for work right now, I've come across some people that promote personal websites as an example, where you create your own personal website that you provide a link for with regards to your resume is short and sweet, and then here's a link, and then it has all the other stuff that you can expand on. And then I had somebody else suggest the other day of creating a personal video that is also linked to your resume that allows people to sort of see who you are, where they can do a bit of vetting prior to well, hopefully it gets more interest, but they can vet you before they even have to line up an interview. So some different tools. And then of course how important your LinkedIn profile is. My challenge is that I've done so many different things. I've sort of heard this from others that that when people ask, oh, what would you like to do? Well, I'm pretty open, right? I've been the CEO, COO, business development manager, all up and down the scale here recently in about 6 different industries over the last 10 years, that there is no one specific thing. So for me, the biggest challenge is trying to focus on or wanting to, or limiting myself to one thing.
Right. Absolutely. Well, you know what we could do at this stage, because we have time at the end when we take calls, and we could do this activity at that point too. Let's move into the next phase of this presentation, into the how, because now and during the how, we can actually talk about the how, the defining our purpose. And that closes up the entire personal brand. So when we go to how, defining your purpose, we think about social media platforms, networking, consistency. And with this, what's important to note here is when we're defining our purpose, we're looking at our impact. Like we're looking at bringing together those three pillars: the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And now the how is, how do we talk a lot about, finding a purpose is a personal journey, is a professional journey. We tie our personal and professional experiences very, very closely into our how. So when we are either as a team member trying to get into an organization, or we're trying to get a client to work with us, when we look at social media platforms, team members should grow their social media footprints by sharing their thought leadership through conversations, written articles, blogs, or storytelling content to incite curiosity and interest. Now here, we know your who, what, where, when, why. We have a little bit more in depth of that. Now we're going to bring it all together, and we want to actually take it a step further by defining purpose through your thoughts. And we talk a lot about, writing, storytelling, incite curiosity and interest. If we use, LinkedIn, I don't know how many individuals use all the other social media platforms, but today, if we specifically target LinkedIn on a professional platform, share thought leadership, share articles about that will incite conversation about what you're interested in. Give your thoughts about the article. If it's an article on Forbes or an article on HBR, talk about what incited you to want to share this and what your thoughts are. And if you're brave enough, tell a little bit about a story that resonated with you and how you feel your personal story aligned to this article. And this is, again, just an opportunity to open yourself up a little bit more, because it's giving us a little bit more insight into your purpose as a candidate for the role, or into your purpose as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, as what you're doing in your career. It's giving us a little bit more insight. Networking. Team members should be prepared to speak about what they are passionate about, their interests, expertise with colleagues and potential clients, and industry connections. And again, networking was, came to a standstill over COVID, but as the doors have opened again, and what we've learned through COVID is networking opportunities on a global platform today is very easy. We can jump on Zoom, we can jump on anything and have a conversation like we are right now, which is in a form of networking as well. And a lot of times we don't think about that, but we should be prepared to speak about what we're interested in, where our expertise is with colleagues, with each other, like we are right now, and just potential clients and connections, because we don't know where that's going to lead. We don't know how that's going to impact our careers in the future. We also don't know how those relationships will develop. So again, we get a little bit more insight into your purpose through networking. And of course, consistency. Defining your purpose requires consistency. Team members should be consistent in their strategy to growing and identifying their personal brand. And this frequency and visibility will eventually become known as their patent or their trademark. When I launched my company, for example, a couple of years ago, I became known as how do you define success? I wrote articles about extraordinary executives. How do you measure success? And I went over 20 months, I went to 20 different leaders across 6 continents and 10 countries. And I wrote about their journeys. I went beyond their bios, and Agilist became known for how do you measure success? Rena talks about extraordinary executives with a play on the word extraordinary. How do you measure success? And I became so consistent in wanting to deliver that over 20 months that it became known as my patent, as my trademark. So where my purpose is, we are everyday, ordinary people, and there is no title and no role and no level in an organization that could define us better than who we are as people. And for us to get to know each other and try to work together and obtain, different positions in organizations through our career, if we don't know our own purpose, and if we're unable to talk about our journeys and our stories and how our personal and professional lives are very, very connected, then that's going to actually inhibit us from actually really living our purpose, understanding our why, understanding how we're going to execute on our how. So when we think about, again, our personal brand, consistency and doing things repetitively so people will remember, Shelby for this, or, Greg for this, so that there's something that you can not only, again, incite curiosity on, but be remembered for. So if we go to the next slide, as we close the presentation, I think it's we have about 10 to 15 minutes. It's a great opportunity for us to open up the conversation, see if I could answer any questions, and just, generate ideas. Michelle Romanow, again, is a huge role model for me. So I do leave with a fantastic quote that she talks about: share stories about your brand, talk authentically about your brand, and get people who love your brand to share their own stories. That's how you build a lasting company. Again, storytelling, go beyond the bio. Let's talk about who we are in a very authentic, real, and somewhat vulnerable way. So I'd love to open it up to everyone here today for any questions anyone may have, and start a conversation. And don't be shy. It feels like a very intimate group, and it's great. So let's talk about what you've learned, and if there's something I can highlight, or even if you want to make connections here amongst yourselves, let's talk about that. Okay, Dave, I've been watching, I have to say thank you, because I love that you're so diligent. You've been writing notes and I love it. So Dave, I'm going to ask you to jump into the conversation and, give us some insight on your thoughts on personal branding.
Well, writing notes is how I retain things. Oh, yeah, this is always, personal brand is kind of a struggle for me, and because I think similar to what Greg said before, or Louis, I've done so many different things that, trying to narrow. At one point, this is a long time ago, I was talking to an old supervisor of mine about a job in a move, and I described myself as a generalist, and everyone was looking for specialists. And his point was, actually, we need more generalists, right? So that's where I was in project management, is that I had done some technical things in a number of different areas. So which eventually realized gave me an advantage, because I could communicate to people, whether they were subsurface geology, geophysics, reservoir engineers, surface facilities. I was in oil and gas. So that's, trying to replicate or explain that in a brand. And what I'm trying to do, or I incorporated this year, my background is in engineering, but primarily project management. So I incorporated to do projects, management consulting, take my experience and then apply it, right? And done some work with small management consulting company, working with through them with other clients, right? But so like who I am is I don't know if I've explained that, maybe I have, but and then what sets me apart is I think I know what sets me apart in talking with the founder of this company I did some work for, was that there's so many companies, entities, organizations out there that actually don't have or lacking the experience that I have. So being able to apply that, or can bring that to them, like things that seem intuitively obvious to me,
Right.
And then why doesn't everybody know this? There's lots of people who just don't, right? And you can benefit from it. So,
And there's vulnerability and there's bravery and courage in coming out to talk about things that we don't necessarily think that we could or we should. But there is huge potential for, again, that relationship building is huge. You have to leave something that you'll be remembered by, and leave something that possibly makes you somewhat of an enigma as well. So
Yeah.
that drawing in the attention, knowing how to keep the attention, creating that relationship, but also leaving enough so that the client returns and says, okay, we haven't finished work yet.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the other part of backstory of two main areas that I did work in. One was called early concept, early project definition startup, even finding whether it's a project that's worth moving forward with. So an exploration appraisal phase. So a lot of uncertainty. And then the other was working on non-operated joint ventures where we weren't in control of it, but we picked, or our company picked what was important, and then we would try to influence those specific things. And then to do that, you had to build a relationship with the operator and the other partners to then be able to sell your position, right? And actually do work ahead of the operator so you could steer the ship, because once they made a decision, went down a path, it's too hard to switch it, right? So you had to kind of be ahead of them, blazing the trail to get them to go down the path that you wanted them to go down, right? So those are all of that. Really, that experience I see as transferable in lots of different ways, and trying to put that into one sentence is really hard.
It is the content and how to gravitate clients to understand exactly what you explained is hard, but it takes time. I think, using the right words and creating that personal brand in a way that we just talked about today, it'll happen. I think it's the practice. I don't know how anyone else feels, but again, the personal brand, it is a bit scary. It's a bit of a scary journey in understanding who we are and how we're represented. Would anyone else like to share kind of their journey, kind of how they discovered their personal brand? No, Shelby, are you comfortable? If not, that's okay. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I'd love to hear from you.
I'm just a student. I actually work for Resource YYC, so I don't super have a personal brand at the moment. So I don't know that I can really share a story because I'm still growing it at the moment. So
Oh, there's your brand in itself.
yeah.
You're a student, and that how you grew into the role that you're with Ron and Rosemary is exactly where you're at right now. So share that.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to definitely share that as you continue to grow and work and go out there and get clients. We're very interested in wanting to know more about you. So don't ever feel that people aren't interested. We are. People are very interested.
All right. All right. Well, yeah, it's definitely like I'm trying to get into marketing, and then hopefully I don't think I'll get into consulting right away, but definitely making a brand for myself to maybe do that in the future. So
Fantastic. There you go. There you go. Greg, what about you? I see your mic is off, so I'd love to hear from you again.
I think the one story that kind of comes to mind that I wanted to share was back in 2005 when I was trying to name my company. And so I'd read a lot about brand and the fact that you really shouldn't name your company after yourself in terms of, if it ever grows to a point where you want to sell it and then your name's not attached to it. So we went trying to find a name, and of course in those days trying to find the .com that went along with it. It was pretty tricky. I'd sort of purchased some software that helped me to come up with a name. But I think when it comes to branding, one of the things that I've seen over the course of years that I've been around is that people often ask, what is Perpetual West? And that the name matters, but the name doesn't matter, because The name doesn't have to describe what you do,
Mhm.
because so oftentimes if the name does describe what you do, it maybe works for today and then something changes and you do something different, 10 years later, and then that name doesn't quite work. So my question to you was, in terms of what I just shared, what are your thoughts around branding and names and all that? So
Absolutely. And again, this is where we go beyond, beyond our name under the who pillar of the personal branding is we need to actually bring a holistic story. So my thoughts on that is I can give my own example. Agilis is Latin for agile. And Latin for me has been very lucky. My previous consulting company was also Latin. It was at a time where there was a lot of change in Alberta. So I called it Novus HR, new HR. Agilis is agile, Latin for agile. And I thought, it works for me. I like that there's a play on, a bit of word from using Latin and executive consulting. And there was a play on word for executive as well. I don't necessarily want to attract what would be deemed as the C-suite executive clients. I believe that everyone is an executive from our start of our career, like Shelby, to the end of our career, like individuals that are currently retiring. So I think that the executive role starts when you start your career and your mindset and how you see it. My hopes is, I think the world will always be agile. And I think that as a characteristic, as individuals, we need to be agile, both personally and professionally. And so I agree with you, Greg, in that how you brand yourself and your organization brands you as well is very, very important for strategic future thinking and how that's going to play into possible M&As, how that'll play into, how you want to change in the world. Absolutely. So these are all things that go into a lot of consideration when building out your brand and building out your strategy on representing yourself for an organization.
thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
No, you're welcome.
Actually, Greg, what you said on the losing your name with picking a brand name, that reminded me of the Bernard Callebaut chocolate factory here in Calgary, and how when it was sold, the chocolatier lost the rights to his own name.
Right. Right.
That's a good point.
Very good point. Absolutely. It's hard. And evolution is good. I always say, evolution is good. How we identify is so personal, but bringing just that, if I could close up and say, bringing just that little bit of a personal touch, people really want to know who we are. They do. We think, well, they're not interested. Why would they want to know beyond my career? But they really do. Individuals are looking for long-term connection, long-term relationships, and we don't know where those will go. So feel free to be authentic and be so open and vulnerable with yourselves and self-aware. I mean, we talk a lot about self-awareness and self-reflect all the time. Really, really know what works for you and what doesn't, and become self-aware. So if that's anything to help your personal brand, I can tell you the clients are very, very appreciative of looking for authenticity in their relationships.
Yeah, I think one of the things to know too, just building on what you were saying, is you have to know where your strong suit is. If your strong suit in talking to people is through writing, then use that, right? For me personally, people come across Perpetual West, then they come across me personally. But as soon as I get them on the phone, that's when it really changes, because that's my strength, is on the phone, talking to people, and just building that rapport quickly in terms of, can I help them? That type of thing. So
Absolutely, really know. And also know where your weaknesses are, right? And talk about your failures. I think people love humility, right? As a leader, as people, they want that, grounded, humble. They want to know what didn't work, and they want to know how you picked yourself up from what we call
absolutely.
failure. Those aren't failures.
Yeah.
That builds character. So
Yeah, learning points, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We actually had a lunch and learn, about showing your vulnerability earlier this year. So thank you for bringing it up.
You're welcome. It's so important.
Yeah.
Well, if there's anything else, I do encourage you, feel free to, let Ron know, or Rosemary, or myself. You have my contact information. Feel free to contact me anytime if there's any lingering questions after the session today. But I do thank you, and I do hope that this was, helpful and beneficial. And thank you for your time, taking out your lunch today for me.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really good. It was great. Yeah.
I'm glad. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosemary, and thank you, Ron.